Thank you to our sponsors, K. Flynn Insurance, elect Bruce Becker for the Lincoln County Fire Board, and the Crafty Midwestern Mommy for their continued support of the Lincoln County Podcast. Hey guys, welcome to Lincoln County Podcast. Thank you for tuning in today, liking and subscribing. Make sure to check out all of our sponsors and support them because they're what's helping keep this alive. And I've got another great guest on today. I'm super excited to sit down with him. We've known each other for a while now. And I'm going to turn it over to him to introduce himself and we'll get going. How's it going?
Good, brother. How are you?
Good.
I'm Stu. I am a detective. I am a part-time lieutenant at another agency. Our unit that I'm in works with a federal task force, and I am the founder and president of nonprofit The Guild.
So what motivated you to start The Guild?
Man, it's a long story. Essentially, I've always felt like I was the type of person that was willing to shoulder burden. That's what got me into law enforcement. That's what's gotten me into realizing that a lot of law enforcement officers, firefighters, military guys, there's information out there that can help us live better lifestyles, and a lot of guys don't have it. And so over time, just starting to see the way the job impacted people and having the information, it led me down a path where I'm like, I gotta do something because I'm capable of doing something.
That's a wild feeling, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I started noticing that a while back with the whole coaching thing I'm building. I started noticing I was being pushed that direction. I'm still would say I'm super religious, but I'm aware of things. And I would just notice people crossing my path with problems and bringing it and different things kind of being put my direction. I remember going home at night telling Casey, I'm like, I don't know why. I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. Why is this keeping? Because I'm a pretty aware person. I'm like, why? She's like, what do you mean? I'm like, I got enough on my plate. I'm just going to ignore it. And then it happened again. It happened again. Finally, I'm like, okay, I'm going to embrace this and start talking to people. And so it's a wild feeling when you feel like there's more you should do.
Yeah. And I think for me, it's God.
Yeah.
Right. I was in the tattoo industry for years and years and years. I had, tattoos on my face, my neck, my earlobes were stretched.
Yeah. It's so crazy how those have just, with the laser and stuff, how gone they are.
Yeah. I don't know if I can shout them out, but if I can,
go for it. Yeah.
Vanishing point laser. I'm telling you right now, those people are amazing. If you got tattoos you want to get out.
That's crazy.
I mean, I'm talking black tattoos. I mean, you remember.
Yeah, no, that's why I said when you come in today, I mean, it's been a while since we see each other in person. I'm like, wow, that is wild.
Yeah.
How gone they are.
Yeah.
Like I would never thought if I wouldn't have known, I've seen you with all of them. That's wild.
And they are just great folks. And I remember different things. I don't know how deep we want to get into it, but essentially at that point, I was living in the back of a tattoo studio in California. I had opened a shop. My family moved out there, and I realized that as the man of the household, I had made a huge mistake, and I had uprooted my family. And once all my kids and my wife was there, I realized in about 2 months this was the wrong choice, and I sent them all home. My wife was like, "We can figure it out." No, we're going home. I just knew in my soul,
just knew it. Yeah,
this is not the right thing. So I sent them home, but I couldn't just walk away from my people and what was built there and whatnot. And so for about 2 years, I lived in this shop, in an apartment.
Wow, yeah,
that was really just like a couch in my office, and showered in a janitor sink, and traveled back and forth trying to keep the dream alive and move into the next phase. And things just didn't. I was not living a good life.
Yeah.
I wasn't like day drinking or getting a ton of problems or anything like that in my normal everyday life necessarily. But every day that the shop closed, it was bar time.
Yeah.
My friends were all the bartenders. I didn't know people when I moved there.
That's the lifestyle sometimes.
Yeah. So I would consume a little under a gallon of alcohol every day. Yeah.
Wow.
Between like craft beer and whiskey. I would go to one bar and drink a bunch of craft beers, go to the next because you can get whiskey and cigarettes and standard buds there, and I would just drink. And it was very disheartened, very not in a good headspace. And it just got very clear to me that something needed to change. And right around that same time, my wife was like, I want to go back to church. We were both raised in church, but kind of in one of those situations where nobody really explained why we went. We just went. And so naturally, as kids, as we got old enough, we strayed
You
away.
rebelled. You don't do it. Yeah, same here.
Yeah, I was
Yeah,
in
the
metal
same thing.
bands. I was
Yeah.
touring in a metal band at the same time, and I just wasn't the church guy.
Yeah.
We'll leave it at that. And I kind of laughed at her, defending myself from this new request of hers,
Yeah.
and she cried. And I was like, oh, well, that's not the kind of man I want to be. Like, I don't want to hurt her. So I agreed to go, and I had some stipulations and stuff, of course. And that first day in there, the pastor, it was the stereotypical, like all the lights in the church dim and the spotlight's solely on me and there's no one else there. And exactly what he was saying was what I needed to hear, And one of the things I heard is peace is not the absence of calamity. And it was like, it struck me so deeply. It was like, you're getting ready to take a lot of calamity. It's coming. And you need to explore peace through that. And right around that same time, things were happening. I was getting out of that shop in California, a shop that I had here in Missouri, the partner I had that things were going well with. In my memory, it was sudden. It probably really was.
Yeah.
Things just started
That's how
going
our brain does
downhill.
it, yeah.
And I got out of the industry, and I remember going to my wife and saying, hey, I have some really terrible news I need to tell you. And she's like, what?
Yeah.
I'm unemployed,
It's a hard one.
She's like, great. What? She's like, that's great. How was that great? She's like, because everybody but you knew that you needed to quit doing that lifestyle. You needed to go into the next phase. And, only you can figure that out. And so I started spending a lot of time with God. I started going into the woods solo and taking backpacking trips by myself, spending a lot of time with God. And one day I heard God's voice, and not in a like bush burning type of way, but in my spirit, innate, if you're familiar. And it just kept repeating the feeling I had was like, you need to be a mentor. Go become a police officer and be a mentor. And I was like, how am I going to do that? I got my ears.
Yeah. You're like, hold on, I'm going from this to this. That's wild.
So I said yes. I'm like, we'll do it. Okay, God, we're going to do this thing. Got it. And I went to my wife and I said, hey, I'm going to start a coaching business and I'm going to go be a cop. And she was like, what? Like I said, you need to do something different. I didn't say, and things just fell into place. I found this laser place. I went there and I remember like being like teary-eyed kind of when I saw the results I could get. And like the first time I realized that I could get all
this was possible. You could turn this back.
Yeah. And then I called an old mentor of mine in body modification, and he was in Arizona, and I said, hey man, what's the likelihood that I could get you to come to St. Louis? And he's like, what do you got? And I explained to him my situation, what I was trying to do, and he's like, done. Find me a couple clients, get me a hotel, get me there basically, and I'll do all of it. So he came all the way from Arizona to repair my earlobes.
Really?
To take this implant. I had a silicone implant in my hand here.
Really?
Yeah, he came all the way out and did all this work, never charged me a dime.
Wow.
Now I did like buy his plane ticket and his hotel because it's, one of those things. But still, what I found was that when I was on mission, right, I felt good for the first time in forever. Like my life mattered. Like there was purpose in what I did, and on top of that, that made me feel like a better husband, a better father. I quit drinking alcohol. It'll be 8 years in March.
Wow, congrats. That's huge.
Thank you. But doing all this stuff, and what I found is that when I lived on mission, I felt purposeful. I was happy with myself. And I asked for what I needed. And I gave people the reason why, that deeply rooted why, which I know you understand. Everything just fell into place, and it was totally doable. And then now, people will say, oh man, it must have sucked to get all those laser treatments. Cause I'm talking like my hand, my neck, my face, all this stuff.
I've seen a video. You put up one of the videos I'm doing on your neck. I was like, whoa, like I can, cause I've talked to people that have done them, and they say it hurts worse than the tattoo did. Some places, way worse.
It's
might have been you that told me that. Yeah.
It's faster, but
well,
it is rough now. And for most people, getting a laser removal is not going to be that bad because most people are going to have like a name or like a little something.
No, your face
it's
and
be done
neck
in
and
5 seconds, but it was my entire neck wrapped around. It was both sides of my face. It was my hand and fingers. And it was definitely rough. But the thing is, adversity is opportunity.
Yeah.
You know, I think about the first meeting I had with the sheriff that inevitably hired me to the jail, still with a face tattoo. And I had gone in there and I was like, here is a packet of all the laser treatments that I've had. And I asked my technician, would you mind drawing me up a plan? It can be real simple. And she did. She wrote a whole for the next weeks when I would be back. We set all these appointments. I came in with that. I came in with like tan plugs for my ears, like skin tone silicone plugs. I came in with Hollywood grade tattoo cover makeup and print out screenshots of the YouTube channels I was watching to learn how to apply makeup as, you know what I mean? As a man, I'm like, I can do makeup. You know?
No.
And everything that I could think of
to sell them on the fact you're committed.
I brought in. And when you think about it, had I not had all those obstacles, right? How impressive would I have really been? I'm a 30-something-year-old man that's like, I suddenly would like to be the police.
Yeah.
Well, why? Because I just want to serve something bigger than myself, sir. Like,
it sounds ridiculous. No, for sure.
All right, dude, you know?
Yeah.
I am Julie Forster with Crafty Midwestern Mommy, your local boutique embroidery and fabric store. I sell fabric as well as sewing notions and also teach classes. And then we also, on the other side of our business, do machine embroidery, custom apparel for local businesses, and just personalized gifts. Again, the store's name is Crafty Midwestern Mommy, and that's how you can find us on all social media platforms as well as our website.
But all that adversity, all that struggle, it lined me up. You know, it set me in place to where the things that I was saying were serious. And I have learned that what we call in the guild, I mean, that's mission, right? Being on mission.
Yeah.
Keeping that spiritual, purposeful mission in place in your life at all times. And that has proven effective time after time.
That was something I struggled with when I had the Taekwondo school. I'd always had a full-time job, taught at night. And like, if I would get really busy and I'd go hustle, do a bunch of jobs over the weekend or whatever, I would like feel alive. I'd feel good.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, I should be tired. I did all these hours, blah, blah, blah. And then I realized it was the goal. For me, I always said it was the hustle, staying busy when I opened the second business. Well, then after years having the second business, I realized that like if my students win at a tournament and I know they've worked really hard for it, like I give the example in one of my reels, I bet $1 million in work in a week.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't feel anything from that. I was like, yep, okay, on to the next one. And I was confused because I'm like, dude, I should be elated right now. I know so many people struggling. I just bet $1 million in work and I got it.
Mm-hmm.
But then one of my students come in and was like, hey, I got voted DECA VP. And I was more excited about their accomplishment. I could give a crap less about that. And I realized I was like, okay, I've got to make a change because this is making me angry. Yeah. This over here is where I feel fulfilled. And that's when I started looking into coaching and giving back and doing more in that aspect. Because I realized that like as the painting company built, we made a lot of money. I was able to do a lot of things locally. And I'd feel good when I did it. But then I'd have to go back to just grinding out the paint jobs, and I hated it. And I, arguing with contractors or arguing with the homeowner because she wanted a canary blue, and this doesn't look canary blue in her house because of her furnishings. And I'm like, oh, am I really having these conversations? To realizing that I needed to focus on that bigger purpose of that coaching and that giving back, and that's what kind of started all this stuff. But that's that feeling. I get what you mean by that being on mission. Now, and I see this with a lot of people, the fillers, the alcohol or the partying, or for some, the drug abuse, whatever it is like that. That's not
pacifiers.
Yeah. Is that what they call it? It's not necessary anymore. A friend of mine speaks about a crack addiction and then with martial arts and his goals. And he goes in now and works for Steered Straight as a speaker, working with kids and going back and giving back and teaching them. I thought I was cool like you too. But he has that mission now, and he is so driven that it's crazy. I've just how in the past couple of years I've really my eyes have been opened up to that. Or like you said, I went back to church for the first time, and I even joked, I made a post about it, and I didn't want to make a post because it's like, no, you only went to church once. You can't put up a post. You can't be that guy. I went to church today. Look at me. But I could not stop the overwhelming feeling I needed to. And I even put in there, this wasn't like a Blues Brothers moment. You know, the light didn't hit me. I didn't do backflips down the aisle. But, you know, just like you said, the spotlight was on you. That was my reference. And I had a ton of people reach out. Oh, hey, man, you know, I kind of left church too when I was a kid. And, you know, I didn't really understand things. What did you notice? I was like, wow. So, kind of blew me away, but it's wild as we age. Like if you'd have told that to a 20-year-old us, you never would have. Like, whatever, get out of here. Get out of here. I ain't gonna be that guy. Come on, man.
I got one to relate to that, and it's proximity. That's what we call it in the guild. Is proximity, right? It's the fact that I had a guy reach out to me one time and say I was doing a pull-up challenge, right? I was trying to learn pull-ups, and I was filming myself and putting it up. And this guy says, "Hey," messages me randomly. Don't talk to him much. We're friends and all that. Or friendly, I should say. And he says basically like, "Hey, man, like the hardest worker, do it silent." And I said, I said, "Hey, I can understand that." I think I said something along the lines of like, not really sure why you needed to send this. However, I appreciate the feedback. I was like, my outlook on it is this: I don't need accolades, right? In doing our duty, we deserve nothing. You know. However, if I'm going to do something that's uplifting and better, that is going to be more encouraging than 99% of the stuff on Facebook. And so that's what I choose to do.
Yes, it is.
So it doesn't matter. You go to church one time, post it. I was at a party. I was like the weekend, I'm trying to get my timeline right.
Oh, you're good.
The weekend after quitting drinking, I performed at a tattoo convention. And then a week after that, I went on a Northwestern tour, right, with the band I was in. Sober. Which sucked, by the way.
That had to test you.
But man, I had a lot of things happen. A dude like that I was friends with that was roadieing for the band was like, "Hey man, have a beer," and I was like, "I don't drink." And he's like, "What's it been like a week? Like you can have a beer with me. We don't see each other."
Oh yeah, they're the same.
I'm like, "Nah."
Yep.
And this guy gets to the point where he's been drinking and drinking. He picks me up, right? And I'm like, okay, I'm from North County.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I pressure on his chin a little bit, push his head back, and push him off me and get down. And I'm like, hey, dude, I'm a grown man. Like, don't be picking me up. Yeah. Don't be trying to pressure. We're gonna have a fist fight here in this bar. I was a little different back then.
Yeah.
You know? But anyway, I had those experiences. Yeah. But then I went to this party once and I wasn't drinking. There was another guy there and he was kind of lightly drinking. And he was like, "Hey man, what's this like for you?" I said, "What do you mean?" "Well, what's it like to be here at this party where everybody's like getting hammered or doing whatever and you're just like hanging out?" So it's just like being at a party any other time. I'm just hanging out with people and having conversation. And we get into like all the inner details of what it was like. And around 10 months, 9 months, somewhere around there, I tell my wife, "Hey, when I hit a year, I'm going to help somebody." Right? Because at that time, I thought, well, you got to hit a year before you have it.
Yeah. We all put those, I've done that same thing too, put some like weird expectation that it's not written anywhere, but for some reason
if it was a magic day that like suddenly,
I always told myself that with the coaching, I had to make $10 million a year before anyone would listen to me. And then I found out people had been listening to me already.
Yeah. You know, and that's
a weird thing you put on yourself.
So what happened with that is on my year, I put a post up, "Year sober today." And I don't remember if it was that day, but right around there, I get a message. "Hey man, I don't know if you remember me, but we were at a party together and we were talking and whatever. And you were, I think by that time I had done the convention, I'd done the tour, and then I went home for a bit. I went back to California, and I think that was somewhere around the 3-month mark. Math would add it. It doesn't matter. Anyway, he's like, "Hey, I want you to know that like right after our conversation, I decided to throw the towel in on alcohol too, and I've been 9 months sober."
That's awesome.
And all he needed was just to meet someone who had a bit of what he wanted.
Yep.
And ask him a couple of questions.
I had toiled with the same thing, and your post, a friend of mine, Josh, had put up some stuff and finally motivated me. It's been over a year. I had a friend of mine just posted yesterday. It was his year. He celebrated his year, and I messaged him. I sent him a text. I'm like, "Dude, that's awesome." Because that 1 year marks when you're like, "I got this."
1 year's weird too, because I don't know if it was like this for you, but when I hit the year, it was exciting.
Yeah.
And I was like kind of excited. I talked to my wife, and she was like, "Yeah, no, that's really cool." And I like, I don't know what I thought. I don't know if I thought my family was gonna throw me
Yeah,
a
no,
party
yeah.
or like whatever, you know. But she's like, those were not great times for me,
No,
you know.
uh-uh.
And not that we had like we weren't getting in domestics or doing anything
No.
like that, but
You weren't in a good place.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so a year was where I realized a year was kind of like getting out of high school and going to college
Yeah.
for most people or something like, oh, it's really started now.
Yeah.
You know, like
For me, it was, I've done it. Like the times when you do, you're like, oh man, that'd be really tasty right now.
mhm.
Oh, we're going to have, we're at a barbecue. Oh, you hear everybody cracking open a cold beer. You're like, that'd be good.
Scotch with a
Good.
cigar. Is
Yeah,
what does it
something.
for me.
Oh, yeah. See, my dad till this day, my dad would he quit smoking years ago, but he said if he goes to a bar with people and they're having a cigarette, he still is like once when he only smoked for a little bit, in like 1962, but he still said he'll have an urge. And but at that year mark, I was like, oh, I'm cool. I'm definitely done. Like for some reason, for me, up until that year, it was like I'm just trying it out, maybe like it's a fad. Like I'm gonna go back because I would always stop drinking when I was in fight camp or whatever. Like I didn't really would say I had a problem with it, but it wasn't benefiting me in any way. But after that 1 year, it was like, oh, yeah, I'm really am done.
So we tell people in the guild because I'd never considered myself an alcoholic.
Yeah.
I'm still careful not to say that. I'm not
Yeah,
into the
yeah.
labels, and I know that some organizations do that. It
Some
works
people
for people
really
and
have
put
a
on 'em.
problem.
Yeah,
And you don't want to disrespect them. Like
Yeah,
I tell people
100%.
that, like I've had friends that were in jail for crack cocaine. And it's like, yeah, I just quit drinking as a life choice. It wasn't like I was going down a bad path. I do say that I try to be like respectful, like, cause there are people legit.
Well, the thing with that
destroys 'em.
though is this. So what we ask guys is like when they're like, "Well, I'm not an alcoholic, but I drink maybe more than whatever," and we say, "Okay, so what's your mission statement?" Then you don't have one. Okay, well, there's your first problem.
Yeah.
Right? Because you're here, whatever. You get them on a mission. You say, "Let me ask you this: the amount of alcohol that you drink, is it getting you closer to the fruition of that spiritual mission that you're on?" Right? Because we'll tell the guys like, "Hey, goals are BS.
Yeah.
They're important. You should set them. But if they're not in line with spiritual path, I mean, like you said, I made $10 million. Terrific. Spending a little thing. It means nothing unless it means something. So it has to be that mission. So it's like, all right, if you're on mission and you really want that thing and it matters to you deeply, it's spiritual, right? Is alcohol getting you closer or further away?
Exactly.
And if it's further away, you do have a problem.
Yeah, that makes
Right?
sense.
You
Yeah.
might have a problem with TV too.
Yeah.
I got a little problem with Oreos right now. You know what I mean?
Oh my gosh, mine's Reese's peanut butter cups. I bought them to hand out at the school, and the girls the other night are like, enjoying that bowl of Reese's down there. I'm like, would you guys eat these damn things? So I stop.
I came home yesterday. My wife had Reese's chocolate covered bananas in the freezer.
Oh, that's the big one now. Yeah.
They are so good.
I bet.
I'm
I
like,
bet
oh my
one
God,
bag
eat
is
these
one
up.
serving, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I bought vanilla Oreos at the school for I was like, I'll have a little snack for the instructors. We did a bunch of treat collecting for the local elementary schools, and I think I ate, I don't know, however many of them. They were little single packs. I went through it in a week. They came in, they're like shaking the box at me while I'm teaching. I'm like, I know, I'm done. I'm gonna go run laps. They're like, we didn't get but one. I'm like, well, that's a problem. You guys should have ate them faster and saved me. So,
Right.
But no, that makes a lot of sense with that. Is it getting you further or not? And that was my big thing. It wasn't benefiting me at all. I felt like crap. I read the research on the weight gain issues from alcohol. It just wasn't necessary for what I wanted. I would wake up sluggish. It was just like, it was to the point I was like, this is going to become a real problem that I need to cut it out. And I will have to say I'm seeing a huge shift in culture these days to people posting and being really excited about it. And I think it's really important because I'll go in and you'll see so many people underneath it 1 year, 2 year, 8 year, 10 years. And it's wild. I had a friend of mine that had gotten sober back when he was older than me when I was younger, and we would go out, and his only thing was if I would every once in a while, if he was driving, he'd be like, order a shot of Zambuca. Like, why? I'm like, the shittiest stuff ever. He's like, just drink it and let me smell the glass. And I used to talk to him like, how? He goes, because I know what it did to my life. He goes, every photo of me in my 20s, I'm carrying a case of beer or a drink.
Mhm.
every photo, he said, and it was destroying my life. I was like, but how do you go out with us all the time? We're drinking and partying and having a good time. He's like, doesn't interest me. He would ask is just, and he'd be like, all right, take it away. He just want that little smell.
I tell people, we're at the county fair, right? Well, all my ride tickets are gone. You enjoy, I'm going to eat some funnel cake.
There you go.
You know what I mean?
Makes
Like,
sense.
that's like the kind of comedic way that I approach it when I'm out and people are like, so you don't drink? Or they like, oh, come on, Stewie, because they don't understand. And for
Yeah.
the most part now, I think my reputation has built as a
Yeah.
non-drinking person enough that people don't really
They don't
mess with
push
me.
it.
Yeah, you know, but they did it first, you know. And it's I think that when you quit drinking, you realize, if it was something you always do, how much of your fun is wrapped up in alcohol. Like, you could literally go do anything. What do you want to do? You want to go, you know, you want to put a couch in the back of a truck and take it to a state park and sit on it and drink? Oh, that sounds great. Hey, do you want to put a couch on the bed of a truck, take it to a state park and sit on it and sit on it?
Yeah. No.
No. It's the same
Same
thing.
thing. Same exact thing.
You know?
Yeah, no, for sure.
Only I don't end with a headache and, you know, maybe doing something stupid and waking up and calling people and saying, hey, I'm sorry. Not sure why, but I'm sure something happened because I don't remember last night, you know?
Yeah. No, and see, I never was a big drinker, but it was such a weird social thing. And for years, I could use my car because I always had a souped up car. I'd be like, no, I'm going to go race after this. Well, then after I got in trouble for racing, I quit racing. Then it was like, well, I'll have a beer. I'm trying to fit in. I'm always been kind of a driven person. Just hanging out never appealed to me much anyway. So I would drink. And then it just kind of stuck around. My dad had always had, oh, let's have a Captain Coke tonight, you know? And it just, I'm a habitual person. I have to watch that stuff. So it was a big thing, but I do love the shift that we're seeing in society of a lot of people being like, no, I'm done with that. I got to say, if you go into any store, it doesn't look obvious because the amount of alcohol and stuff that's there, but I see a lot more of that on social media.
Craft brew non-alcoholics now.
Yeah. Yes.
I'm a sponsor with Athletic Brewing, and they IPAs, they do stouts, and it is. I mean, it is really, really good.
Nice.
And so, you know, I promote those.
They're not just stuck with a Heineken.
Yeah, I got a trivia night we do every year. Well, you know, you sponsor us.
Yeah.
You know.
You're good.
And we're coming up in April, and reached out to them again, and we tell them what we're doing. Hey, we're helping men, you know, live on mission. And they send beers out to us every year, and there is such a like, yeah, let's get them out. You know?
Yeah. Oh yeah. No,
There's like one time I told them, hey, the guild, we work with first responders, military guys, you know, whatever, trying to get them to live more on mission lifestyles, get through their traumas that they experience in the job. And part of that is helping guys drink less or not drink at all. And they were like, cool. And they sent us like 100 and something beers the first year.
Moly.
We're just like, yeah, I mean, it showed up at my house. I'm like, we had them left over. We were like reaching out to people and just trying to give out packs to people because it's like, because that's one thing. If you're going to quit drinking or really anything, all those habits, those things that you were interested in, that's a lot of the fear.
Yeah. It's in the social of turning it down or how do I do this now? It was a drinking thing.
Yeah. I always tell people, what could be simpler than just not doing something?
Yeah.
Like, that's really easy. The act of not drinking is like the easiest thing you could ever do because it just consists of not doing anything.
Yeah, no, it's just
the
peer pressure of it that intimidates people, or or that's just something they did, like they did it. I always get a kick. I like mystery books or legal thrillers or whatever, but I always love it when I get one that was written in like the 80s, and they'll talk about Grissom does it a lot. They talk about grabbing one for the road, and it's like, wow, it's crazy. Like, when I was a kid, that was a thing. Like, I remember my dad driving me somewhere for something at school. We had a 76 Corvette, Bud Light. And it was totally acceptable. That was, you know, he ran me up to T-ball practice or whatever, you know.
Driving to the lake, my dad always with a little bush beer.
Yeah, had one. Like, but nowadays it's really, we're seeing a turn away from that, which is great. So with the guild, like, exactly, and I guess we probably should have done some beginning, but what exactly is it?
So the guild is it's a very big program.
Yeah.
You know, and we've been working to shape it down a little bit. So let me try to, shape it down when we explain it. Let me try to nutshell it. Pretty big nutshell though. So essentially what the guild is we're a federal nonprofit, and the idea behind it is that we want to offer training and education and support to men of service. Right. And so what a man of service, how we define it is, it's really any man that wants to serve something bigger than himself. So if you're a guy that's like, hey, I need a more on mission lifestyle and I want to be somebody that serves, I want to answer some call, then you fit. We work primarily with first responders and veteran communities. We do extend that to family of first responders and veterans as well. And like I said, really just any man that's wanting to be of service to something, you know. But mostly it's you know, cops and military guys for the most part, some firemen and all that. Corrections, you know, all these different fields. The way we operate is we have critical incident debriefing. So myself and Tyler Zarnowski, our VP. Tyler's actually like one of, I don't remember the number. He says it to me a lot. I should probably remember it. But he's one of very few people like in the region or possibly the country that teach this model of critical incident debriefing. And what that, if you're unfamiliar, that's like something crazy, terrible happened.
Yeah.
And he shows up or now we show up. And we create a space where those people can debrief that and talk about what it looked like, what it felt like, whatever. And it's not coaching. It's just an opportunity to say, you know, I saw X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
And it made me feel this, that, and the other, or whatever it is. So we offer that. The next level is peer support. We're both certified peer support specialists in the state of Missouri. And what that looks more like is it's like the step after that. So these guys can, you know, say, hey, I just need to talk to somebody. My wife's leaving, or I'm having some issues with alcohol, or I've got some problem in my life, some adversity. And that's more of providing a space that allows a person to talk while not really making suggestions, but asking them questions about what they would want, you know, where they'd want to go, et cetera. We can kind of build them up in that way and let them make their own decisions by being essentially a safe sounding board for them. The next part of it is immersion camps. So we run an immersion camp titled Stations.
That's what I was going to ask about.
Yeah, it's a Thursday night to Sunday morning with some like briefing sides prior to and some debriefing after. And that is very secretive. But the idea of it is all the lessons that the guild lives by, we fire hose in a weekend, an extended weekend, essentially. We teach you about, we call it policies, procedures, posture, and proximity. So what you believe, what you do because of your beliefs, how you present yourself, and what you're near, information, people, situations, whatever. We help you to write a mission statement. We help you to write co-missions, things that serve that spiritual mission. We help you to write what we call objectives that are like goals, but a little bit different.
Yeah.
We have you write those objectives. We have you map out and macro all these different policy procedures. So what do you believe? What do you do? We help you identify what works, what doesn't work, what's serving, what's not serving, productive, not productive, positive, negative, all that stuff. And we put this all together in what we call the gauntlet. It's a map, right? We take all that information, and with that information, this person writes an oath. They set their life to it. So in a weekend, they're like, flip the life switch. This is now me. This is now what I believe about myself. And there's a lot more to it.
Well, no, for sure.
They go to a culminating exercise that's intended to be pretty intense. That, to be clear about the guild is not a place where we sit guys down and go, tell us about your feelings.
Yeah.
Do we make time for that? 100%, right? We got guys come up to us and like, man, we're going to play Kumbaya around a fire, you know? It's like, and that's their way of poking the bear.
Yeah. Making a little joke about it to kind of find out.
Yeah, so I always say, because it's usually like a vet or a cop or something like that. And I'm like, hey, you know, here's the thing. We got serious jobs, right? We can't be cowards in our line of work. I can't think of anything more cowardly than a man that's afraid to face his own self. Right?
Yeah.
So if that's you, you do not fit. But if that's you right now and you don't want to be that, then you do, and we'll help you, you know? But the fact is, the greatest warriors, the greatest men that we know are men that do that work. That face themselves, that take their own feedback, that are introspective, that when other people tell them, hey, you screwed this up, or this is a weakness of yours, they just smile and say thank you. They take what matters and they leave what doesn't.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, and that's
It's-
a hard thing for everybody to learn.
Yeah. So we're not a sit around pretending that if we like cry in each other's laps and tell a bunch of sad sob stories that we're going to somehow make progress, right? And we're also not a, hey, executive level, immersion camp where
Yeah.
we're going to let you pretend that you signed up for buds and
Yeah.
PT you to
Yeah,
death for
that's
4 days
yeah.
and tell you that we love you on the last. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
We see enough of those on social media.
But we will make you move.
Yeah.
We will PT you some, right? Because we got to exercise the mind and body so we can activate the spirit.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how that works. And then the last side of that is we do coaching. So we do one-on-one coaching. What we're most proud about with all of this is a guy can really fit in at whatever stage he needs. So sometimes we have guys that are like, hey, I'm suicidal. We're like, well, stations probably isn't going to work for you yet. Because it's very intense, right? It's not a cakewalk. The first portion of it is it's a bit of a struggle, the first part. It has to be. So rather than saying you don't fit, see you later, we put them in calls for peer support. We give them resources. We make ourselves available if they need to talk. And then as they're doing the work, we'll if they're cops, we'll set them up with first responder provider network and get them, all this stuff, and get them ready for stations if that's what they would like to do, right? And guys can kind of come in and out, but we don't charge them anything, right? Now, guys offer to make donations or whatever. And the way we do that is through fundraising, writing grants, and offering training and education to companies. So,
cool.
Yeah, so we take the lessons that we're teaching at stations and we block them into classes. Right now, there's like 5 classes on. We're working on some youth stuff as well for agencies. Some of it will write grants to be able to do it. Like if you're an agency that works with, youth and they need more resources, if we can write a grant, we'll get a grant and we'll pay ourselves off the grant to teach you the classes that are going to help the kids.
Oh, wow.
And so, same thing, like we raise funds, like trivia night, our goal is to raise $10,000. We're going to take that $10,000, a portion of it will go to our operational expenses, insurances, website, all that. You get it.
Not everybody gets it, but no, for sure.
But the largest chunk of it is going to go into a separate fund that's for coaching programs. So these guys that have had traumatic incidents or, come back from war or, had a bad year in copping and they're just not doing so well, maybe got an officer involved shooting or, whatever, we can say, hey, get on this coaching plan. It's going to cost you nothing. We're going to devote 3 to 4 months of our time to you. 2 separate coaches. You'll balance week to week, one for headspace, one for production. We'll balance. We'll put together a mastermind. We'll put you in this very serious program. You'll pay nothing. Right? And so guys are like, whoa, they start to get where they're, well, I can't just accept this. I don't want your money. You know what I want? I want another man out in the world living on mission. And if the extent of your mission is that you show back up to your work and all you are is a shining example for other men,
perfect.
Great. And if you want to go start your own guild, even better. Do your thing, And that's essentially how we do it in a not so nutshell.
Well, no, and that's a very good explanation of it because, even as much as I've known about it, known you and sponsored the events, I didn't know all that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's great because it's somebody doing something for, I could only imagine the things. I've talked to different officers that do different things and just in casual conversations, the stuff that is seen or dealt with that they have to bury down or whatever the term is and go home and then be normal.
I can tell
you see that crazy stuff that you gotta go home and be dad and husband and everything else with. Mm-hmm. This is back here in the back of your head.
You start, for me, it would be like I'd get home, my wife would be mad at a dish in the sink is the one I always use at stations.
Yeah.
It's kind of comical, and we all have experienced the wife saying, you didn't see that plate?
Yeah.
You know? But as it started building up for me, I would notice that my response what I would want to say is like, this is what troubles you.
Yeah.
This is what gets your heart rate up, and I'm sort of trying to embody the posture that I would be in. But my first year, in police work, and I don't want to make this all about me or
No,
make
no,
myself some
no,
kind
this
of
is
martyr,
no.
but this isn't to be braggadocious. It's just a fact.
No, it's you're teaching a lesson. It's something we've talked about. You know, you're using your first person story not to brag, but you're using it as an example.
Right. And that's the thing is, my first year in policing was so rough, and I did not know.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that's what it was like for everybody.
Yeah,
I really did. It wasn't
Really?
until a year through, my sergeant at the time was like, "Man, Stewie had a tough year," and I was like, "I did."
you're like, what do you mean? The rest of you didn't have that? Yeah,
Yeah, and they're like, "Yeah, whatever." I mean, it was just, you think of it, it's the worst.
Yeah.
Crashes, deaths, people on fire, people shot. I mean, just
you've seen it.
one after another after another. It seemed like I moved from days to nights back to days, right? And it was probably 9 months, 10 months, something like that. And I cannot count for you the number of bodies that I
Wow.
saw, which is, I mean, again, I'm not, what was me? That's not
Yeah,
what I'm doing
no.
here. But
It's a tough job, and everybody thinks that police officers, they just give everybody tickets and fuck with them about their mufflers.
yeah, no,
They don't realize the things that are seen and are dealt with that they have to go to sleep at night with.
I remember when I got back on days. I was on days for maybe a week. My sergeant was trusting, right? And was like, "Hey, welcome back, whatever. I'm going to take a day off." Another guy was still the second at that time. I later was his second. And I remember I'm back on it for a week, and I sent a text to my wife. "Hey, we've got a, potentially an active killer in this house barricaded with a hostage." And I'm like, I've been back on days. It's like 6 a.m.
Yeah.
I'm like, no, and anytime something happened, I would text her, "Hey," I'm like, "I have no idea what this day is going to be.
Yeah.
But this is what I got." He ends up, I can't get too much into the details because there's a situation that he had that prevented him from being able to respond out to us.
Yeah.
And the decision, not mine, but someone else's decision, was that we were going to put a team together and dynamically hit the house and enter it from the backside and split level and do all this work. Which now, knowing what I know, I mean, I was a 10-month, 11-month copper at that time, but knowing what I know now, I'd be like, unless somebody's bleeding out, which we kind of didn't know. I'm quarterbacking. The point is this: every time I moved, I thought, "Whew, nights was rough, days was rough."
Yeah.
It always followed, and so I realized a couple things. PTSD is not years of service.
Really?
PTSD is as little as one incident that signals the brain. There are calls that I can tell you about where I remember the shape of someone's hand or the smell or the taste of something or the color or very specific
things that imprinted.
details.
Yeah.
Those details stick in the mind, and even in one event can cause it, because a lot of it too, which I've learned, and I'm probably getting this wrong, so my therapist might kill me, right? But it starts from when you're a kid.
Yeah.
So if you've had like a rough childhood, or even like one that you're not super into, you can develop what's called complex trauma.
Yep.
And basically the traumas that from you're a child get implanted into the traumatic events that you've been witness of.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I remember the first really terrible thing that I had was a car accident involving a bunch of kids, and they were all over, and it was one of the worst things I've ever witnessed in my life.
Yeah.
And I just remember bouncing all over this place, and a person I thought was going to live dying a moment later, and just feeling like an absolute bag of trash.
Yeah. Oh, I bet.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And I remember that I could hear sometimes. I was talking to this one kid who was still alive, and I could hear him, right? After the fact.
Yeah.
I could hear our conversation.
Yeah.
Right? And
you got to be normal when you can, but you can.
Yeah, and I'm thinking to myself, I was maybe 4 months on, and I'm thinking to myself, "Oh, geez, I'm one of those. Turns out I'm not strong enough to do this job." These are the thoughts that
These are what's going through your head.
Man, I'm a pretender. Imposter syndrome comes in. What are they going to do when they find out that I'm not fit for this?
Yeah.
Right? When they found out I faked my way
You're
here.
a fake, yeah.
And I remember going to my buddy who I was on crew with, was like, "Hey, Highway Patrol puts on a debrief. It's called the Defense, I believe." And he's like, "You want to go to this?" And I realized in that moment that he wanted to go.
Yeah.
But he didn't want to go by himself. He didn't want to be that guy. So he invited me, the newbie. Right. And so we went. And that's when I learned that auditory things is totally normal after an incident.
Oh, I bet.
In fact, years later, when I had a bunch more stuff and I started hearing screams and white noise, I had to tell my wife to put the fan off, right?
Yeah.
Because I could literally hear lamenting people yelling out in the fan at night. I would wake up to it, and it fluctuates for all people. I don't want to paint the picture like I'm some way down the rabbit hole, but the fact is, if I don't come out and say this stuff to people openly, who's going to do it?
Well, no, you have to project that message and you have to be open with yourself about it.
Yeah.
That's one thing when I got dived into with business coaching and listening to a lot of these people are like, oh, you really getting that much insight? You're going to learn how to grow your business? No, I was learning that I wasn't the only one struggling with things. Not that it's anywhere near dealing with casualties or guns pointed at you or anything like that, but it messes you up. It's wild that you said that about, the PTSD and back to childhood. I just started No More Mr. Nice Guy by David Glover. And that's literally what he's talking about on chapter 4. I was listening to it before today. He literally what he's talking about, because he's talking about being the nice guy and how and it nailed me to a T. I called Casey. I'm like, hey, I just ordered 2 books from Amazon. He says we should both read it. I want to sit down and read this together because it was me to a T. Trying to make sure the clients are happy, the family's happy, the kids are happy, everybody's taken care of, and then you resent the hell out of it. Because then when something doesn't go your way, you're pissed. Yeah. And it's wild, but it is. It's one of those, like, you have to talk about it. Someone reached out recently about some trouble with their business. And I responded back with a big, long story about me going through the same things. I'm like, don't think because all the content, I'm not struggling with that stuff too. And like a day later, like, thank you. They were like, that really meant something. And it was like, I wasn't trying to one up them. And I told them that I'm not trying to one up you, but I'm dealing with the same stuff. I completely get where you're coming from.
Yeah.
But by you being open about your story is going to help a lot of people be open and comfortable about theirs.
We have an exercise. We call it YANU. It's an acronym because, first responder military guys love acronyms so much. Stands for You Are Not Unique. And the idea of it is at first when you hear that, you're like, oh, yes, I am. You know what I mean?
You get defensive.
But the reality of it is it's true. All people are suffering different things in the same ways.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? The brain is the brain.
Yeah.
And also, by the way, the brain is the body. It's not really body, mind, spirit. It's actually just body and spirit.
Yeah.
Right? But we separate the brain because it's so much different from the bicep.
Yeah, it makes sense.
You know what I mean? It makes it easier for us. So we teach people that, like, it doesn't matter. So we got guys that will come in and they're vets and they'll be like, oh, but I didn't go to war. It's like, well, who cares?
Yeah.
You signed up for something to serve you, whatever. Like, in doing our duty, we deserve no credit,
Yeah.
And yet, you signed up to serve people. You're just as valuable here as, if we had some SEAL dude come in who's seen all kinds of war. The other side of that is let's say you never even served. My brother-in-law recently said, hey, man, they're getting a lot more cops and military dudes, in this thing. I'm wondering if I fit in. I said, yeah, bro, you absolutely fit in. You're like more necessary than you realize. You want to know why? Because the dude that did 2 tours in Iraq right after 9/11 doesn't know how to see the world the way you see the world.
Yeah.
Because you never had to see what he sees.
Yeah.
You are an example of what perspective looks like when it's not flooded with death.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And so we have to interlock these people, and that's why we open it up to more than just service members and responder types, because we have so much different levels and things. I remember I went to the shooting range with a buddy of mine that was a Marine Corps door kicker. I mean, I'm talking like real deal.
Yeah,
not,
bad dude. Yeah, Marine Corps, that's real.
Target package, hit the door, and what happens inside is what happens inside kind of job.
Mm-hmm.
Humblest dude you'll ever meet.
Yeah.
Comes out to the range with me early in my career. Hey, can you help me, run some rifle drills? I'm just getting set up for a patrol rifle. He comes out, spends his time. And anyway, he says to me, like, I don't envy you. Like, what do you mean? He's like, got a hard job. I was like, you had a hard job.
Yeah, you're like, oh, hold on, what a minute.
This man says to me, your job is harder than my job. And I'm like, you're a nut.
Yeah.
He said, you know why it's harder? Because when we went through a door, we knew what we were there to do.
Mm.
There wasn't like a whole lot of PIDing and doing all this crap.
No.
To,
You're going
you know,
through to get the
whatever.
target.
And that's it.
That's it, yeah.
You guys got to go in and assess and move and, you know, all these different things. And it hit me. Well, some years later, after I got on the unit that I'm on now, right? So right now my job is I'm a shield operator, right? Which a lot of people hate that word, but it's the only way I know how to explain it to you. And what that means is I'm the guy up front with the rifle shield, making first entry.
Okay.
That's my gig, right? We're investigators. We do barricades. We do rescue stuff. We do, you know, what we're basically a catch-all between patrol and an all-out SWAT team, right? We write and serve our own warrants. I mean, it's a whole deal. It's a hard job is the point. And people see it and they're like this, that, and whatever. And I had a patrolman say something to me along that similar line, sort of backwards of what this guy said. Your job is harder than my job. No, it ain't.
Yeah.
I'll tell you why. I get to go to work. I get to whatever. The only thing that I maybe have to face in a day is some combat, right? And not getting shot at is not evidence that we're super good.
Yeah.
By the way.
Yeah.
However, I'm fully prepared most times for what I'll have to do. It doesn't change. If I get called, it means that we're going to something relatively serious, and we're either going to jump out on something or we're going to go through a doorway.
You've been called, so it's elevated.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
Right. You know, when I was on patrol, a check the well-being call, a guy came out of a garage door at my partner and I wasn't even going to go. I went because I was bored.
Oh, wow.
And it was his call. We showed up and a guy comes out of the garage with a rifle and starts screaming at us to kill him, pointing a gun at us.
Holy shit.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, you don't know what's going to happen.
And then, you know, the next shift you get, you know, a bunch of terrible death and trauma and this and that. I have more peace knowing that at 2 a.m., you know, a guy who's just killed somebody that they can't find, my phone's going to ring. And I'm going to have to go look for this dude.
Because you know what you're being prepared for.
You know what it's going to be.
Yeah.
It's just like what he said. I know what it's going to be. So let me like bring that back into why that's relative to the guild, right? We're not unique. What I'm experiencing, fears, pains, pacifiers, whatever it is the same thing that the patrolman's experiencing, the same thing that the Marine Corps guy's experiencing, you're experiencing, and the dude who's totally drifting is experiencing.
Yeah.
It's all the same stuff. Just different triggers for it.
Yeah.
Right? Kind of don't like that word, but you know where I'm going with that, right? Different circumstances is what I mean, but it's all the same, right?
It's all trauma in a different
doubts,
way. Yeah.
Disbelief, discredit, right? Procrastination, displeasure, you know, torture tasking, doing things to avoid the things I know I want to do, right? Slouching, just no spirituality, no connection to God or creation or just your existence in general at all these different things. We all experience it no matter what levels or what job we have. And so that was one of the biggest things that I learned that I can contribute is my situation is what it is. And it's been hard for me realistically to like get in front of cameras and microphones and be like, I'm the police and I got a cool door kicker job. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I even had a guy once tell me like, yeah, we get it. You're a cool door kicker.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
But the reality is this, that's imposter syndrome too.
Yeah.
If you don't say, I bid $1 million.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Well, that's your reality, is it not?
Yeah, no, and you don't know who's looking for that motivation. I would get a lot of crap. Some old friends would mess with me. Oh, we get it. Your business is doing good. Or, oh, we get it. You went to the gym today. Well, I was getting ready to compete one time at a tournament, and dude, I never would have thought this guy looked up to me. He was like, man, I've just been going through some shit. And the other day I got up and damn, if you weren't on the story that you went to the gym that morning. So I got my clothes on. I went to the gym and I appreciate it. And I was like, no way. Never would have, thought that. I would thought, wouldn't have thought he saw me like that.
Mm-hmm.
And through different people reaching out as an aspect made me realize that, your example, because you get the people are like, oh yeah, we get it, blah, blah, blah. But you never know who that motivates. That stuff motivates me. I'll see things like that friends of mine had done. A friend of mine always posts about 6 a.m. every morning. I'd be sitting outside my shop waiting to see what he put up that day, and that would set my day. Well, then I started doing it, and people would respond to me, hey man, what's up? Didn't see your post today. Those kind of really get me going. I'm like, really? And then the DMs kept coming with it. I'm like, wow, okay, even where I'm at, I can make a difference. But we tend to get hung up on only posting the positive too.
Yeah.
So it's important, like you just said over the dish, like I started seeing a counselor after I had the school or the painting company open for a while. Once I started doing like $1 million a year, and I was dealing with all these, what I call big kid problems, because I'd get really irritated with other people who were like, ooh, my tire's flat. I'm like, really? That's what you're pissed about today? Like, I gotta, all this art crap to deal with. Or like when we were getting ready for Worlds with my team, I probably ran off a lot of students because I was so dialed into making sure that team got every bit of my blood, sweat, and tears before we went to that tournament, that I'd, people would, oh, well, what about that? Well, who cares? We're getting ready to represent the United States. Like I really had that, like, that's what you're concerned about? Fuck off. Like I would get upset about it, or I would, be asked a question. I'd say, well, here's what I would do. And people would be like, meh. Be like, well, you just asked me. You just told me how successful I am. You asked me a question. Leave me alone. I got other things to do. Like, I had really kind of had trouble dealing with that in the beginning of not really a who am I attitude, but I've got all these other things weighing me down, and you want that, and learning.
You don't know the priority.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Get on the bus or get run over by it kind of deal.
Yeah. And trying to deal with that, because I could tell it was really, I didn't like where it was taking me. I was losing the, with the Team USA stuff, I was losing the fun of being at the dojo, because I was like, we've got to commit. We've got to, this is a big deal. We're going to be draped in that American flag. We've got to do it. Now, the next year we went, I took a totally different approach. We actually scored better. We placed better. We brought home way more golds. And the kids had fun. And they even said, they're like, you didn't make it. I mean, I didn't make it not fun for the team. Like, I wasn't screaming at them or nothing. I mean, I was just like, any chance you, like, I was literally one day, I was so exhausted. I sat down on the couch. I leaned back. Casey goes, you gonna take a nap? And I've heard a bzz. Nope. I'll go run my Kindle. She's like, what? It's like, said she's nervous about her form. Let's meet me at the dojo. I'm headed up there. 2.5 hours later, a couple other ones come up. We trained, we ran. Later that evening, I went to the gym with one. I mean, I took it to the next limit. Like, when we got back, all of us ended up sick. All of it, but I had that. Like you said, do you not know the priority? Like, this is not the priority right now. And that was something that really made me go, ooh, I need to redirect. That's what's wild. Like right now, I'm listening to the book, No More Mr. Nice Guy. I thought it was going to be a book. So Chris Williamson's got a great podcast, Modern Wisdom. Love the dude's podcast. He talked about Dr. David Glover and the No More Mr. Nice Guy. And I was like, oh, this would be kind of a cool book. Not to be a pushover, maybe how to say no in business. Boy, if he did not describe, I was like, that ain't me. I'm not Mr. Nice Guy. I was like, I'm a nice person, but I'm not that guy. Holy crap, if he did not completely explain me in the first 10 minutes of the book. I was like, am I on candid camera? Like, that was wild. And then the more he talked, and then he literally was just talking about that, the PTSD and how it defines us as we get older, but it's from something as a kid. And it could be as simple from being hungry to not being nurtured when needed, or basically kind of anything. Anything could have imprinted on you. And then we come in here now, it's just wild how, and that's why I went back to church. I made the commitment to go back to church, because I was like, okay, God's putting me somewhere. Like, I always looked at people that use that as like a cop out. Oh, they just can't explain it. Ooh, must be God. I always kind of mocked them. A friend of mine was pretty much into wanting to be an atheist when we were younger. I never would say I was that, but I'd laugh at it, whatever, but just too many things kept happening that I was teasing Michael Davis up at Anchored Hope. He was on last week, and I was like, man, somebody was knocking, and I was like, if I don't answer this knock, they're going to hit me over the head with something. Like, at some point, God's going to be like, all right, buddy, we got to get really dirty now, because you are just not answering what you need to answer. So we're going to really give you something to liven you up. We're going to give you a sign that you can't miss. Cause I had told him, I was like, I just every time I turn around, I'm pushed back to your doorstep for something, whether I'm donating, helping, painting, something. The wildest ones, we painted their basement. I had a big fight with a customer, pulled the paint out, didn't go back to the house. And one of the issues was over the dining room. He was pissed we didn't paint the dining room this color on our first coat. Tried to explain to him, it's not the process, blah, 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 all this stuff. So we were painting the church basement. And I was like, hey, man, you want an accent wall? Yeah, we love an accent wall. I was like, all right. So I get up there walking it with him. He's like, how'd you guys match our color? I said, what do you mean how I match your color? He's like, well, that's the color in our sign. It's unique, dude. Did you guys, sure one come out? How'd you guys match that for the accent wall? I'm like, bro, that was leftover paint from a job that I just told a guy to kiss off on and walked out on the other day. And he's like, you got goosebumps? I'm like, yeah. I was like, all right. Because I was always well, I'm not that religious. I'd always make that comment.
Yeah.
And I was like, yep, guess I'll be seeing you soon. I was like, dude, it's just pushing me like everything. Like I kept noticing I'd catch modern music on the radio and I'd catch, oh, Kanye's talking about God. Like different things kept happening. I was like having these conversations with myself in the truck going, dude, you're cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. Like what's going on here? And it's been a big change, but sharing that message that we struggle with that stuff and sharing what you're sharing today, like you never know who that's going to reach or who it's going to help. Like I said, I posted about going to church. I had several DMs from people that it blew me away. And I told Michael Davis about it. I'm like, man, there was a reason that I was up at 10 o'clock at night struggling over how to word that post. I thought I was struggling over it because I didn't want to be like, ooh, look at me, I went to church. Like you just said, telling your story, oh, look at me, I've got a hard life. Like that wasn't what I was trying to do with it, but something was pushing me to do it.
Yeah. Look at like the gym, right?
Yeah.
Everybody that goes to the gym is sweating.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You're going to sweat. I'm going to sweat. Yeah. The morbidly obese person is going to sweat. And the guy that's been, working out every single day for 30 years and is in the best shape of anybody's going to sweat. Everybody's going to sweat. That's what self-work is like, right? That's where, coming to coaching or a program or to therapy, we really do a great disservice to pretend that it's any different from the gym from the standpoint of like, some people might go to therapy because they're really bad off. And if they don't do something, they're going to
They're suicidal. Yeah. It could be really bad.
And other people might go because they're, premeditating like, hey, I've got a difficult job or I've got a little situation. It'd be nice to talk to somebody. Yeah. Everybody's just going to the gym. And I think that like on a worldly view, we notice that and like God's kingdom is the same way. Like you mentioned, I went to church one time, like, but did you?
Yeah.
Was it really just one time or did you go to church many times before that? And what's actually happening is not you attend, it's perspective.
Yeah.
What's actually happening is that you're coming back to God and now people are seeing a man returning to God.
Yeah.
I remember when I got baptized just recently.
Yeah. That's something I've been thinking about too.
Yeah. I talked to some guys at the church that I really respect. And I said, man, I think I'd like to do this thing like outside in a lake and really private and whatever. And they were like, whatever you want to do, it's your thing. It's your covenant with you and God, And yet, part of the reason why we do baptisms at the church is because we want testimony. And that's been happening for me a lot lately. Because I think I mentioned I don't like sharing the cop stories or the cool door kicker stuff or beyond the police stuff because it feels a way, right?
Yeah.
I don't ever want to present that we're trying to exploit those occupations for follows. You know what I mean?
Oh, for sure.
However, a lot of people have been coming to me in all kinds of different ways about being a Christian, about being a police officer, about being a mentor. And what has been illuminating for me is that I let imposter syndrome sneak in, right? And,
it's easy.
And
it does it.
Me.
Yeah, oh yeah.
And it's like, you look at a guy like Goggins, who's one of the big five or whatever, and then you've got some SEAL over here that's like, screw Goggins, man. He didn't, whatever.
Yeah, oh, God, yeah. Those have been popping up, yeah.
If that's going to happen to somebody like David Goggins, whatever happens to me for doing this is really sort of like, who cares?
Yeah.
And the other point is that, somebody's going to watch this podcast and they're going to look at the two of us and go, them dudes are a joke.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure.
You know what I mean?
There's gonna be people that are gonna watch it just so they can do that. Yeah.
And it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Like going to Yelp for a review, you're like, I'm going to go look at Yelp for this restaurant. It's like, well, you're either looking for a reason to go or a reason not to go.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you might as well just go and see what happens.
See it for yourself.
You know? And I want to get back into God if I can.
Go for it.
God speaks to men in a very specific way.
Mm-hmm.
And you mentioned like the call. Are you familiar with the hero's journey?
No.
You should look that up.
I will.
It talks about, it's a essentially a not a platform. What am I trying to say? Like a blanket on what the experience is like when a person answers a call and goes on a quest and returns home. It's really cool. There's a really good like video documentary that's like 30 minutes or something.
Yeah, I'll check that out.
But we talk about it in the guild is we call it the war drum, right? God speaks to you in that way. And the analogy that we use is, you've seen Braveheart, I imagine, right? Okay.
It's been a while, but
most men have,
Yeah.
right? Do you remember the scene after they kill his wife and they demand that he turns himself in, and he goes riding up to the gate of the castle on the horse, and he coming up and he's riding the horse in, and it's like doom, 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 and it's like really like ambient, and it's sort of like mysterious and anticipatory and all these things, you know, it's dramatic. And he goes up, he puts his hands up, and you're thinking like, oh, he's gonna do it, you know, whatever. Well, we'll get to that point right before he does what he does, and we'll stop it. We'll play it for guys, you know. And they're like, oh, he was just getting ready to pull that flail out and smack this dude. Yeah. Right? But we do that because it paints the picture of when God is speaking to your heart, that's how it feels.
Mm-hmm.
Heavy, meaningful, purposeful, right? It's the drums playing before you go out to do the thing you're called to do. And when you don't answer, you feel away. Yeah. You know what I mean? And it's disconnected, and it's like you can't help but to not. Yeah. And so if a single scene of a movie could make you feel that impacted, what does denying God feel like? Yeah. And how subtle is the nuance of denying it? You talk about going to Worlds and, you know, representing America and being all types of way. And like you say, like, well, I didn't scream at my students. What if you didn't have to? What if the posture that you had, just your very presence, was enough to make them know we're going to do what he says, because if we don't, he'll scream. And you never gave him any reason with your words. Yeah. But what if your body language? Oh, I bet my body language did.
And not really so much with the team, but with the other students. I know it did, because I was a friend of mine that was getting ready too. We both discussed, like, we were on a warpath. Like, all right, you go teach everyone else. You three that are going, get up here, because we are putting it down. And it did. So then the next year, I even talked to parents about it, because we went over, we competed, we got done, and then I started crying at the restaurant that night, and most of them didn't notice. Casey did. She's like, "You good?" She's like, getting a little emotional on me. I'm like, yeah, because I realized that at that moment in their lives, at that very point, I knew that Riley was going away to school. I knew that Madeline was stepping up on stuff she was doing. I knew everything was going to change, that they were living a moment, and I was a part of a moment in their lives that they would talk about for the rest of their lives, that when we walked out the door that night, because we were all getting on the plane to go home, it was over. And I knew the next year when we went back, it wouldn't be that same magical thing. And I was sitting back there like like about to ugly cry. Yeah. Because it meant so much. And I knew that I was in that moment. And then literally for like me, we'll do that stuff, and I'll have that great feeling, and everybody's done this. And you know what? Because of our hard work and because of that leadership, here we are. And then the next morning, I got some lady going, well, I really don't like this blue on the ceiling. And I'm like, ugh. I really, like, I just look at them, and that's what's pushing me away from that and more to the code, because that is where I belong, and that God's call has been pushing it that way. And I would notice, like, I'd be in the car. It was the wildest thing, because I'd realize a song or a podcast that started getting religious, and I'd skip it. Yeah. And then I'd hear it again. I'd pay a little more of attention. And it just, different things kept happening that was just wild. And so I've made sure to talk about it with people, because there's probably other people seeing that and hearing that and going through that same thing. They're going to go, oh. That's what that is. He had it too.
Tyler, he has been stuck on this saying lately that I just love.
Yeah.
He's in a Bible study one-on-one with another guy, and this guy who's sort of mentoring him through that was like, you know how you know if it's God or the devil? If it's pulling you, drawing you in, it's God. If it's pushing you, it's Satan. Right?
Wow, yeah.
And people can look at that however they want.
Yeah. No, you can read into that a lot. Yeah.
When you say the devil, you know, people get weird, like they picture, like, you know, whatever they picture.
A pointy tail,
But,
yeah.
you know, the reality is however you want to see it, there is something out there that actively seeks to work against you.
Oh, for
And
sure.
that's my personal belief. I mean,
oh no, I completely agree. Our society itself, like you can get on your phone. And so I went in and hacked my Instagram. I went in, I created a new one for the Map Warrior Official and all that stuff. And all I did was follow mentor, motivational, positive, different things. Never once does anything religious pop up. But you could scroll 5 things and titties pop up.
Oh yeah, there's pornography everywhere.
It's everywhere. And it doesn't matter what you do. To where I don't even like my kids to look over my shoulder if I'm just scrolling my Facebook feed, because you never know. And it's wild how it's and I believe social media, you know, and we all use it. I'm going to use it to promote this podcast. There's a real evil there with the way it points everyone.
Pornography is probably, I would argue that pornography is the most destructive force as far as pacifiers that exist.
And I'm seeing a lot more on that. It's been something I've been paying a lot more attention to, because it was something that as kids, you know, stay up late and hope Cinemax came in clear. Yeah. You know, so you could see something. But now
like Channel 98.
Yeah, whatever. Well, it was like all squirrely. You're like, ooh, boo. But now it's just easily accessible to everyone. And I look at it going, that's crazy what that could do to kids. I had talked to a bunch of my girls at the school, all in teenage years, about social media. I was like, hey, every time I talk to like a friend of mine that's my age, they tell me that they get unsolicited, you know, pictures. And they're like, oh yeah. I'm like, what do you mean? Oh yeah. Yeah, it is. Yeah. I'm like, you guys are 14. What do you mean? Yeah. Just shit, you know, comes some dude in India or whatever, just pops up. You know, we've got restriction on our DMs and stuff, but yeah, just stuff. And they just blew me off. And I was like, because I was expecting them to be like, what? No. You know? And they were like, they just were like, oh yeah, like it was an everyday occurrence. And I'm like, I can't imagine that as someone who has children going, because I mean, these girls are like my children. Like I was appalled. I was pissed. I'm like, wait, man, like just the way it was. Oh yeah.
A guy tried to groom my oldest daughter after she got a cell phone. She got herself a game. This is before the parental control.
Yeah.
Was good. Try to groom. I could go on and on.
Oh yeah, it's crazy.
One of my closest friends is part of an FBI task force for you know, crimes against children, and they do what is it called? I can't remember the name of it right now, but they essentially have his job. He has to fish through image after image after image of child pornography.
Same guy I'm thinking of. Yeah.
Nope,
we talked about it the other day.
I'm
it's insane.
Like, dude, you looking at all this CSAM and there's a special place in heaven for you. That goes back to the whole thing.
We've had that same conversation. I've told someone that exact same thing, that there is, because we've discussed some of the stuff they've seen, and I was like, there's a special place for you one day. I was like, because it's crazy. Because I didn't even lie. I was uncomfortable even talking about it.
Oh, it's insanity.
Yeah.
And that's what pornography is doing, right?
Yes, it is.
Because just like anything else that you could dopamine, right?
Yep.
It's like,
and they say that it escalates.
Stronger booze, stronger this, stronger that. Now they're trying to make child sex dolls.
Yeah.
And they're saying that
it'll help it. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it isn't.
No.
It's gonna feed the desire to get the job done, and you're gonna see an increase in rape.
Yep.
You know?
Well, because now they can act it out. Now it's not going to be such a fantasy.
Yeah.
No, and the stuff does. It seems to. I've read a thing on it with the dopamine, and it was who did it? It was a really good content on it, because it was talking about couples and how they were doing the science between the younger people, like 20s, struggle to even have an intimate relationship with someone of the same sex or opposite sex, because they're used to being so voyeuristic from watching it on screen.
Yeah.
That they struggle with it, and how it affects marriages and everything. And it's something that I've been researching a lot more. because that was something we were kids, you stole dad's Playboy, whatever. But now it's just, you're dumbfounded with it.
Well, when we were kids, Dad would leave it where you could get to it.
Yeah. Oh.
And that was his way of avoiding the birds and bees. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
My dad
exactly.
didn't do that, but my buddy's dad, who was my neighbor,
My dad did that. Mine, they were left out where you could get to them. Or when we first time found the older brother's stash, people don't realize, but now it's just they got to chase it. And I can't even imagine what it is for someone that's younger dealing with that.
Oh yeah. Because
it's escalating it to such a high point.
It's poison.
That's crazy.
It's poison. And
there's a lot more people coming out about it, saying that it is one of the worst things. I'm seeing a lot more content. I'm seeing a lot more coaches. Andy Elliott's put some stuff out on it with him and his wife that is great, that I think needs to be said.
Sound of Freedom, I think, did a good job at showing an amount of that and helping to like fire the alarms off.
I still have not sat down to watch that as bad as I want to. That is one of those, it's like, I need to.
We went in the theater. And I mean, I've
watched all his stuff with Sean Ryan, where he's went on and interviewed about it. And I've watched a ton of his stuff, and I've watched a ton of stuff on it, but I've not watched the movie, and I feel like I really need to do it.
I've never been in a movie that it was like the entire certain parts. First of all, let me just say this. You're gonna sob.
Oh,
when you watch it,
yes.
But they do a really good job of not leaving the theater hopeless. Right? Which is something like, for me, I'm an emotional dude. I get attached. I'm an empath,
and that's why I've avoided it, because I'm like, is gonna mess me up. Yeah.
That theater was so quiet.
Oh, I bet.
And all you heard was an entire theater of people attempting to cover their sniffles and softly get out their coughs. And it was intense. I mean, hair on your neck. Intense. And, that goes back to, my experience versus your experience. For me, I'd say, well, to my buddy, man, you got a worse job than I got.
Yeah.
I was working one night. We stopped a vehicle. It's a long story, but essentially me and my buddy were working together at secondary at another police department. We stopped a vehicle after the time that we were supposed to be off work.
Yeah.
We were in the PD getting ready to leave. He's like, you want to do another lap? Sure. I hop in shotgun. We go over to a spot we don't normally park. It's God.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
We're watching the street. We're there 2-3 minutes. A car comes down off the road heading south, turns westbound, no blinker. He looks to me like, I'm like, yeah, geographics, right? They're coming from an area, going to an area, they're whatever. All these things go off in my head, right? A little bit of reaction to presence from the driver.
Yeah.
I'm like, we're out. Let's mess with him, see what it is. I'm figuring maybe we'll get like a gram of meth or something. Or something like that. And it ends up being a guy who had been grooming this child for several months, who had driven hours to come and pick her up. And I don't want to get too into the details, but there were instruments of death in the vehicle.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I just remember like going home and having nightmares.
Oh, I bet.
About my own kids and staying up.
That's why I haven't watched that movie yet. I'm like, I want to sleep.
And trying to proceed about my daily life. And I'm like, you know what? Just like let somebody shoot at me instead of this crap. Like I will take that any day. I mean, and I know that sounds away and whatever, but God bless people that do those kinds of investigations. Because they are.
I've talked with people before, and that's. I looked him straight in the eye. I'm like, how? He's like, I've got to do it. Mm-hmm. Like, I get it, but I don't.
That's his war drum beating in his chest.
That's what he told me. And I was like, well, God bless you. Because I just couldn't believe it, because he had to leave. He was up at the school. And I was like, I was telling Casey, I'm like, man, there's a lot I can do. I've worked with kids. I've dealt with kids that have had those issues, but I've never witnessed it.
Mm-hmm.
I can't even imagine it.
That was a neat one, because I asked my sergeant, the unit that I'm in doesn't typically do that kind of investigation.
Yeah.
But it hit close to home.
Yeah. And
I asked my sergeant, can our agency adopt this, and can our unit handle it? Can I see this through?
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. I got great supervisors that are super supportive of what I do, the guild. I mean, the place where I work, our leadership is top tier. It's really, really good. And he's like, yeah, absolutely do it. So I got to work with ICAC, the FBI. I got to work with, hopefully I just said that right. I got to work with some guys that were in Homeland Security that were there that have
Oh,
interest in
wow.
certain things, and you know, another city, their PD there. I got to work with one of their detectives because we had contacted where this guy was from, put this whole thing together, and they actually allowed me and then the guy that I was on duty at this other department with to come out when they executed the warrant so that
Oh,
we could be
nice.
present. We
Yeah.
were like hands on the whole time, and it was one of the better investigative experiences of my career. Things got relatively deep in that case. At least it felt like it for me.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And I would not want to do it twice.
No, I've
You know?
I've had too many friends over the years that were police or first responders that have dealt with things through the Taekwondo school or whatever that have just arrived places on scene for different ones that were would just blew me away having the conversations with them about it, saying they're talking because they need to get off their chest.
Yeah.
And thinking to myself, wow, I you know, here I was having an issue because some customers bitching about paint color, or I got a kid eating their boogers in class that's stressing me out. And then there's, you know, it's good to remember there are other things, but your path.
If everybody thinks nobody knows the priority, what's the actual priority?
Yeah.
You know, and there's the other thing, like, and let's get super real for a second.
Yeah.
Maybe this is too dramatic for your show. If it is,
Nope.
I apologize, but let's get super real. Why the guild? Because who is going to look after the dude who has to thumb through hours of videos of
Yeah.
11 and 9 and 8-year-old little girls and boys being raped?
No, and they need that.
Who's going to look after that guy?
Yeah.
What is out there for him? And then if it is something for men, it's like, again, and not knocking dudes, make your money.
Yeah.
Coach the execs. You want to find a millionaire
Yeah,
dude
yeah.
and help him with his marital issues and his drinking issues, or get back to you know, homeostasis after a rough divorce.
Yeah.
And he'll pay you 15, 20, 40 grand to do it. Good on you. Do
I'd
your
probably
work.
pay more than that.
You know what I mean? Yeah, but
no, for sure.
But who's looking after the people like that guy who's legitimately every day of his life eating his spirit little by little to try his best to keep your kids safe?
Well,
my
and
kids safe, you know?
It's that old adage too that you're the man, just suck it up.
Yeah.
And I've been guilty of saying that. I've been guilty of putting that on myself with stresses, just being a father. You know, first before when Casey and I decided to have kids, I was having my own kids, I researched it. I went to Joe Rogan at the time, for some reason, had a bunch of content on it about how it made him feel when he had kids. And I like researched it because I wasn't going to ask somebody. Why would I? And, you know, looking back on it, it's like, well, I knew like a bunch of dads. A friend of mine, Ron, I modeled a lot of what I do with my kids after him and his kids. And I could have went up to him, like, hey, man, he was a Marine, great, solid dude. He'd have told me. It would have been a great conversation. But, you know, it's one of those like, it's not what men do.
Yeah.
Well,
keep it to yourself. And
yeah.
Suffer in silence.
Yeah. And that's where you guys come into play. It's so important.
You know, and that's, you know, the other thing here is looking at like how life progresses, right? So one of the crazy things that we had, you know, I'll give you two examples if I can. Yanu.
Mm-hmm.
The way Yanu works is everybody gets in a circle and somebody says something.
Yeah.
Right? I had difficulty with drinking alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're like, well, that's me. And the guy over here is like, yeah, I relate to that a little bit. And the way we do it is it's if you can relate in any type of way, doesn't have to be the exact same thing, but if you see that and you're like, yeah, I can relate to that some. If it's nothing, keep your hand down. The idea is to illuminate the fact that you're not as on the island as you think. You're not
for sure.
Unique, you know? One day this guy says, I have legitimately considered taking my own life. In a room full of 13 men. 13.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Not a single hand down.
Oh, wow.
To the point that we were like, stop. I think we said this on every podcast, so hopefully there's somebody out there listening to everything I'm on, getting tired of hearing the same stories. You know?
No, you're good.
But 13 men.
That's
not
wild.
a single one had never had that thought.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You know what else we found? Guys coming back from war, right? Or who have been back from war, maybe went at 9/11. I was a 9/11 18-year-old.
Uh-huh.
Part of the reason why I'm a policeman is because I got survivor's guilt from something I never went to survive.
Yeah.
When I got into my 30s, I realized I had ignored a call for 20 plus years.
Yeah.
And my window was shutting. That's the truth behind why I'm a cop, is because I was designed, I believe, to be of service. And however that worked out, I needed to have done it, and I didn't then, right? But these guys are coming back years and years later, and they're back 20 years, right? Whatever it is. And you know what military-age males are to them now? Children.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I watched something with Tim Kennedy was talking on something about that and how the war, and now we've got another generation coming up that is their children's age.
My daughter is older than a military-aged male.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, that's wild.
I got one that's well beyond that, and I got one daughter that's about the age of what military-age males starts at, maybe a little older than that even,
Yeah,
depending
it's
on where you
wild.
are in the world. You know? And these are the things that, like, you know, unless we talk about this stuff. Here's another quick one.
Yeah.
Tyler ran a debriefing where I gotta be careful with the details, but essentially, we'll make it up. Essentially, let's say guy kills wife, shoots at police shoot guy, right? He goes to the briefing. He's like, who wants to talk about the event? What do you think the response going to be?
Oh, I have no clue.
Yeah. I'm not telling you nothing, dude.
Yeah.
First of all, I was just involved in a shooting.
Yeah. Oh, yeah,
Right?
yeah. They're not going to talk about it.
There's a couple things I'm not supposed to do. Talk to state, make posts on Facebook, and probably talk to you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
But, you know, like joking, but serious. These guys aren't going to talk. So he tells me, you know what I did? Anybody in this room kind of happy that guy's dead?
Wow.
And what do you think you got?
Oh, yeah. You got it. Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of am. All right, great. Let's talk about how that's not unique, how that's a normal thing to experience. That's a part of grief. And let's also talk about the part that spiritually, naturally, the way you're designed, there's an amount, however minimal, of guilt and things that are going to alter in you because you fired and took a life or didn't fire or whatever it is. And the fact that you're satisfied with the death of another human being. These are not things you're naturally supposed to have, especially if you're a biblical dude.
No.
You know what I mean?
Well, just a nice person in general. You're not supposed to feel happy about that.
Yeah, so you have to have these opportunities to say the hard truths from a place of, you know, everybody's like, oh, the safe space or whatever. That's a real thing.
Yeah, for
You know
sure.
what I mean? The challenge is then you start preaching like, oh, this is a soft area for you to go, and you're gonna lose out on people.
Yeah.
One of the worst days of my life in police work, the absolute very worst thing, the thing that still to this day wakes me up in the middle of the night. My wife has to tell me when I'm being loud at night sometimes because it picks up. It's just it's the nature of the thing.
Yeah.
If you are a service member, you cannot avoid it.
Yeah.
You are going to have some symptom in some way, however suppressed or not. The very instant leaving the hospital on that call, there was a woman, God bless her for being there and trying her best, outside at the helipad. And she was like, we're going to debrief right now. I have to go change.
Yeah.
I have 6 more hours of my shift.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I have nothing to say to you.
Yeah.
God bless you for being. I actually called and apologized. I called the hospital to try to get her and apologize.
Oh, yeah.
I was super disrespectful.
Oh, I bet.
My glasses were on. She's like, what about you? And I was like, I am fine. Can we leave?
Yeah.
I don't even know why I humored this. It's time for me to go. I got to
get back to work. I got
There's
important
police
things to
work
do.
to
Yeah,
do.
there's important things to do.
You know? Really, I want to go sit in my car and sob and think about popping myself.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
No, for sure. But but that's not how you're going to react to her at that moment.
Yeah, you know, and that's the thing. So it is a difficult balance to figure out, and not just in that world. I guess I'm getting that because anytime I have the opportunity to talk about the guild, I really want people to understand the seriousness of what we do.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's not just kumbaya, God, but you guys are not holding hands. No, it's real.
Yeah, the wage of failure to the guild's mission is death.
Yeah.
And that's what we tell our guys. When guys come back to cadre, it's like, you know, and similar how you explained yourself at Worlds, that's me at stations.
Yeah.
You know, like I'm at stations, guys are like, watch out for Stu. He's super neurotic, and I've gotten better.
Yeah.
You know, but
But you take it seriously. You're taking it with
standard.
100% of your grain. Yeah.
The standard. People are like, oh man, I'm feeling. I don't care if you're tired. We're not here to worry about our own needs. We're here to help these men. And that's how originally it was. And I had to get to where I found the balance in the standard where I do take the mission very seriously. I know the cost of failure to it, and I know the purpose behind it. And yet I'm not torture tasking myself and others to the state of burnout anymore.
And that's going to be hard for most people to take life seriously.
Yeah.
I have to watch out with the businesses and stuff, not to burn everybody out around me, because I'm taking what I do so seriously, and I get so flustered with other people that are like, whatever, it's Sunday, just chill.
Nobody's going to love your baby as much as you.
Exactly. And having to walk that line and understand that. But that's awesome that you guys do all that with the guild, and that it's something that's going to be here for those people, and not just, like you said, first responders or military. I guess that would be categorized separately there. This is something that men can go and men can talk, because I think it's something that's not being talked about enough in society. When I first started seeing some of that stuff pop up on social, some of your bigger influencers, it's like, because there were a lot of them were like relationship this, relationship that. Well, then I noticed as the business got successful and the pressures and everything that came along with being a family, running a business, and then I got multiple businesses, and then trying to do this and travel with the team, and that finding that core with the husband and wife. And I've seen a lot of influencers come out with, they're just, that's what they're focusing on building is husband and wife, and the men needing to talk about things and saying uncomfortable things. That at first I was like, oh, it's so clickbait. They're just being clickbaity. And then the more I grew as a person, the more I realized, no, this is real. And this is something that we all need, and we need to dive into it and experience that.
Yeah. And that's again, our focus of providing an area where we're going to create spaces where that stuff will be discussed. But more than that, we're going to give you training and education and a system to leverage.
Yeah.
So you don't have to, you're not going to come have a conversation, talk about a bunch of sad stuff, and then we're like, all right, man, we'll see you next week.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You legitimately have a system that everyone in the group is running.
Yeah.
If they're choosing to. Because we don't chase. I mean, it's this is here for you. You can use it or not use it.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Doesn't matter. It matters to us, but we're not going to chase you.
No, you can't. You can't force it, because if it's forced, it's not. It has to be. That's one thing I've learned with people, even if it's just martial arts training or work. You can't beat it down their throat. They've got to want it.
Yeah, definitely. Because as soon as they do. That's another thing, want versus intrigue, right?
Yeah.
You say, oh, I want to quit smoking cigarettes, and then you smoke a cigarette 5 minutes later.
Yeah.
What you've just done is you've called yourself a liar.
Yeah.
Now you've got compounded guilt and unforgiveness harboring in yourself. Now it's displaying in your posture.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And whatever. The English language, right? Or just language in general, replace the word want with intrigue. Interest. I'm interested in the idea of quitting smoking. I'm intrigued by what life would be like if I was to quit smoking, right? What have I done? I've changed the intent. I've said I'm exploring that. I'm not saying I'm going to quit and then breaking my commitment to you.
No, because you break that so many times that then it just becomes another word. You're not
law of reciprocity.
Okay.
I'm inconsistent. Law of reciprocity?
No. I've heard it before, but I couldn't tell you.
Basically means you do something for someone, they naturally feel inclined to do it for you. It works inwardly too.
Okay.
So I tell you I'm going to do something, then I violate that trust. Now I owe you something. I owe myself something, right? Even though you don't care if I don't quit smoking, necessarily, but I've said out loud I will do this. I want to do this, and then I lied, so I have all this compounding guilt and all this different stuff. And that posture is a huge thing, right? Posture is essentially a combination of what you're thinking and believing and your physiology.
Yeah.
Right? Mixed with the subconscious, because, the things, that's the issue with PTSD is a lot of that stuff gets in, and we'll sort of have that culminating event that we blame all our trauma on.
Yeah. Yeah.
But really it's compiled, and it builds into your posture. So that was a powerful thing for me when I went to therapy. Is I did that because one of the reasons I was courageous enough to go to therapy. And that's not braggadocious.
Yeah, no.
That's a diss on myself,
yeah.
right? Because I would easily cower out of that. But one
Yeah.
of the things is I knew that I'm like, if I go to therapy, I'll learn about what therapy does for people and I'll be a better leader.
Yeah.
And so I can be like,
I've told
"Oh,
myself that story before.
yeah, you
Yep,
know."
yep.
And then I go there and she's like, so what's your relationship with your wife? On like day one, my therapist is great. I'm like, oh, it's awesome. She's like, yeah, bullshit.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm like, what? And she's like,
last time
"Listen."
I was in with mine, she asked about, well, next time we're going to talk about your mother more.
Yeah.
Haven't been back. I was like, well, shit just got really real. My schedule got busy.
Well, I mean, and that's the thing. So she's like, hey, and it's not that my wife and I have a bad relationship,
no.
but this is what she said. You're an A-type. You know that about yourself, right? Yeah, of course you do. You're part of this, you know, whatever. Your job, how could you not be?
Yeah.
And have the success in the job and whatever. She's like, even in this room, like with the way you sit, she only works with men of service.
Yeah.
Men and women of service. And she's like, the way you sit, the way you walk, what you wear, you know, we call them uniforms and assignments, you know, all these different things. She's like, you scream, you know, that you've been through some stuff in your job. And it, like, you're the only one that doesn't think that. She's like, you know what else you do that you don't know you do? So what? She's like, next time your wife argues with you, tell me that you don't blade your stance and broaden your shoulders and lean over your toes some and change your face and talk to her calmly, but stand in a position of, I will kill you if you try to kill me.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, that's wild.
Like, get out of my head.
Yeah. And she's like, well, I never thought that, right? And we teach posture.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But we were teaching posture more of a learn to select your emotional and belief state before you try to achieve. We taught it more of like become, you know, like be, do, have. We taught it more like that. So if you're going to ask your boss for a raise, take a hard look at what you believe, how you're going to do it, and what posture you stand on when you do it. Be super conscious. It wasn't really about like taking an inventory of your physiology and learning how you regularly stand or what you do in certain things. That developed it deeper where it's like, okay, if I'm standing a weird way, I can assess what's happened, what I'm in proximity to, and what I'm thinking. Anyway, I went home and I talked to my wife about it, and she's like, yeah. And I realized, man, I do that.
Yeah.
So she ran me through this exercise where she stood me in a room, and she's like, you know, she's not like a large woman or like a particularly threatening woman.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And I've met some threatening women in jiu-jitsu.
Yeah. I know.
Yeah, as well. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But she's not particularly that. She's like, I'm going to stand in front of you and all I'm going to do is relax, you know, whatever, but I'm just going to walk towards you. You know? And I'm like, okay. And she takes a few steps. I'm like, all right. And I'm kind of laughing.
Yeah.
Like,
you're like, you're not going to trick me.
That's it. Discredit. Like, this is good.
That's dumb. Yep.
She backs up a little bit. And she's like, how did that feel? And I'm like, I mean, whatever.
Yeah.
She's like, okay. And then doesn't warn me and immediately walks at me like super quickly. And, bro, I'm telling you.
Yeah.
I
was there.
Like, I turned my hip. My hand went out some. And it was all like.
Instinct. It
was like, I'm going to guard with my support side hand. My right hand's coming down.
Mm-hmm.
And just things that I would have never thought that I would do.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wow, there's something to this. So we started testing it and playing with it a little bit, you know, and we found that now when we do stations now, our cadre, we train them in interviewing and body language, right? In a small way. I mean, no. Through a whole course.
Yeah.
But the guys are learning to ask questions a specific way and read body language in a specific way so that when the dudes are showing up, they'll have a deeper understanding of who they are and how they act, because the guys that go through our program come back.
Yeah.
And that posture side of things is such a big thing. If you are out there and same for you, Matt, if you're not paying attention to your posture and taking like daily inventory of even like sitting in the chair like this, you know, it's like all of it. It's life altering when you start doing that.
And being that self-aware. Well, that's great, man. Well, I've got to cut it off just because we're going to be here. Me and you got to be here all night. No, you're good. But no, it's awesome having you on. I look forward to definitely we need to do this again.
Yeah.
For sure. Thank you to everybody that's chimed in and watched.